Thank you all for being here, and welcome to our first Community Emergency Response Team CERT program, our first quarterly all-hands meeting of 2019. We're really excited with this one. This is one that's been in the planning for quite some time, and we're really excited about our keynote presenter tonight. Just to go over some updates on the CERT program and things that are upcoming, if you have not enrolled or registered or taken one of the mandatory CERT recertification classes, we have 4 remaining, March, April, May, and June. Please make sure to register for those mandatory recertification trainings, because after the last one, we start all over and you'll need to retake the program again to become active with our program. The other thing that we have coming up on Monday, we have a very special presentation by CERT volunteer Richard Eimers, who's here this evening, and that's Monday, March 4th. March 4th, right? And he'll be speaking about his response and his experience on his activation and deployment to Butte County in response to the Paradise Fire and all the recovery efforts. Richard was up there for a full 7 days with 9 days, so 2 travel days, so it was a full 9-day deployment. And I've met with him several times and gone over all the different things that he did, and it was really, really interesting. I think many of you will find the response and what he was asked to do and what he was doing pretty interesting. Yes, Beth? It's at 6:30 p.m. in this room. And all are welcome to attend that as well. It's open to anybody that would like to come, and it's right here, and we'll start right at 6:30 I'll introduce Richard, and we'll get into that presentation. So without further ado, we're going to introduce our city's emergency services coordinator, Katie Ng, who's going to give an update on our city's emergency management program, and then she's going to introduce our speaker this evening.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I have the honor to introduce Officer Troy Zeeman. He's a veteran of the Newport Beach Police Department, and he teaches the active shooter training. Troy was also involved in the Route 91 shooting in Las Vegas, so he'll be able to share some of those lessons learned. So we're really lucky that we have someone who works for our department to not only share with you what you can and should do if you're ever put into an active shooter situation, but also he'll share with you his firsthand experience. So without further ado, please welcome Officer Troy Zeeman.
Thank you. Okay, so I've been a police officer for 23 years. I did 11 years in LAPD, and I still am doing 12 years here. I still got 9 more years to go. I've been involved in a lot of training for active shooter. Back in 1999, we had Columbine. I was part of a gang unit back then in LA, and LAPD started a formation, diamond formation, to be able to combat active shooters. That formation has now, and since, will always evolve into something better and better. So it has evolved by then, but I've been involved in all these different trainings of trying to figure out what's the best way that first responders can actually respond and do the best work they can do. Unfortunately, my slides keep getting longer and longer because we have more and more. Not all of them are on here. We just go through a couple of them just to kind of get your mindset of understanding that these are active and they're ongoing, and people are going to be in an event at some point. We hope that we never get an event. I hope that I never got an event, but as Katie said, I got into an event, and it was the worst event that we've had on record here, and it was something that even law enforcement agents that were in the event couldn't stop it immediately, even though we knew that if it was close enough we would attack the attacker, but he was too far away. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through some slides. We'll go through some of the Route 91, and we'll hold our comments and our questions until after. I'll have a question slide, and then I can answer all the questions. We can go over certain things. I know that some people in these classes, what they like to do is they like to talk to me about Route 91. So absolutely, you can talk to me about that. Ask me any question you want. I'll answer the best I can and for what my knowledge that I know about it. So these are some of the slides that we're going to be looking at, Columbine. One of the things that we found out in here was that prior to this, our active shooter response was that officers would go there. We didn't call that active shooter at the time. We would go there, we'd wait for backup, then we'd enter and try to figure out where the shooter is, right? We didn't really have a protocol per se. We knew how to go into buildings and take out the threat back then, but it wasn't such a protocol. It was more of a get a couple of guys and go in there and do what you got to do. The other side of that was that most people did what a normal earthquake drill would be, right? We all hid. We just hide under a desk or hide in a place that you felt comfortable, because there was nothing that we taught the citizens that they could understand what to do in an active shooter. So as it has evolved, we're now doing these active shooter trainings for citizens so that maybe you guys can be better at reacting to this. None of the stuff that we are going to say is 100% that you're going to survive. It's just what is the best, most advantageous way of getting out and helping others get out if you can. So this one, Virginia Tech, everybody understands what this one was. Does anybody not know the Virginia Tech one? Guy goes into Virginia Tech University, right? Goes to the classroom, goes into the classroom and shoots the students in the classroom. One of the things that they found out about this is that students were actually acting dead. They were getting shot and acting dead. And he still went up to them and shot them more, right? So these are the things that we have learned, that shooters, what we're being taught and what we're being told, it doesn't mean that they're going to do what we think they're going to do, right? They're all, I mean, for one part, they shouldn't be going in there shooting a bunch of people either. Sandy Hook, this was the one with all the kids. Guy goes in there, shoots a bunch of kids, cops roll up, and then he shoots himself, right? So another thing that we're learning is how to barricade ourselves. When we have the ability to barricade ourselves, we're gonna talk about that, and those are the things that we're evolving also. Pulse nightclub, same thing. These guys barricaded themselves. These are adults. They barricaded themselves in a bathroom. What do we know about a bathroom in a nightclub? The doors don't lock, and then they get in, and they're all in the stalls. Stall doors are very thin. If somebody wants to go through it, they're going to go through it, and this is what happened in this scenario. So again, things that we learn. Unfortunately, we have to learn it in this way, but things that we learn, that's what we're trying to do. And officers are now, from the Diamond Formation back in '99, which was a formation of 4 officers. When I started the training, I was told I will get to the scene, I will get 3 other officers before I enter, and then the 4 of us are going to go in a diamond formation, quote unquote. We're going to go in and we're going to take out the threat or neutralize the threat. Nowadays, we are telling our officer, if you are first on scene, you are not waiting for anybody. Go in, because we would rather you get into a gunfight with the person. Even if you die, we would rather that happen than for you to be waiting 2 minutes before your backup gets there and then go in and have more citizens die. So that's kind of what they're teaching us now. They're pushing us further and further in what we want to do. But that's our job. Our job is to go in there. Luckily, the statistics allow us to feel comfortable doing that as officers. The statistics of the FBI is that when we engage the suspect, more than likely we are going to win, whether the suspect takes himself out or we take him out. There are very rare incidences that the officers die because of the suspect killing them. So it's one of the things that we have learned psychologically, what the suspects are thinking, right? They want an easy target. They don't want a hard target. So we'll talk about that too. Las Vegas, this is the one I was involved in. We'll talk about that probably extensively just because I was there, and most of the time I do this, people have a lot of questions because I was actually there. After that, Parkland, another high school, right? The officer outside, everybody knows that the deputy outside didn't go in, right? Was he trained to do that? We don't know. I can't tell you. Did he do what he was supposed to do? I'm not even going to tell you that either. But I know one thing, that through the evolution of this, including this one, we are being pushed that you will not wait for a backup. You will go in immediately and engage the suspect. So that's, again, something that we actually also evolved through this whole thing in our training. This one just happened, Thousand Oaks. Officer died in this one, right? Deputy dies. Does everybody know how the deputy died? Okay, the deputy got shot a couple of times by the suspect. According to reports, suspect hit the deputy a few times in the vest. There was a CHP officer that went in with him because they got there at the same time. Perfect, right? For officers, we think that's perfect. Unfortunately, there was a smoke bomb that was blown up in that scene, and because the smoke bomb was in the scene, one officer was in front of the other officer, and the other officer shot him. So again, what we're being pushed into doing is going past our limits, but we know for a fact that the suspect did not kill that cop. So if the smoke bomb wasn't in there, maybe they would have stepped left instead of right. they would have been able to take the suspect out quicker than they did. And that's what we're being pushed into, and that's why we do our job to save you guys. In Newport Beach, we're doing such a good job with fire that we actually train with fire now. So the first initial officers will run in, and they're going to try to neutralize the threat. The second wave of officers have fire with them. So we're coming in with fire, and fire is going to be giving medical attention while we're securing them. So I know that other agencies are starting to do that, but it was the first time that I've seen it here in Newport, and it's been a great program for us to be able to respond like that. This is one of the things that we want to kind of change your mindset, right? It can't happen to me. It will never happen to me. I'm not going to be in a place like that. It could happen in a store. So when we talk about active shooter is a person that is going around trying to shoot multiple people. It doesn't mean they're actually looking for a specific victim, right? They're just looking for somebody who's easy to shoot. And that's one of the things that we try to talk about is when you're off doing your normal thing, going to the store, going to a concert, going to a movie, anything, right? Aurora, California, or Colorado, there was in a movie theater, that happened. When you're in these areas, we want you to start looking for exits. Start being aware of how to get out. What if something were to occur? What could I do to better my chances to get out, or better the chances of me and the person next to me, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to provide here. I will hope that nobody ever has to go through it, because as great as training as it was for me, I still don't want the training. It was not good enough training. So this is the definition, FBI definition: an individual actively engaged in killing, attempting to kill people. Everybody understands that. Open, closed, doesn't matter. Somebody goes into your house and there's multiple people in your house, 3 or more people, it's an active shooter. Okay, so it doesn't really, for us, we get calls all the time for active shooter now. Used to be shots fired, man down. That's what we used to get calls on. Shots fired, no victim seen. Now, if somebody calls in a shots fired, we are deploying like an active shooter in anywhere. If it's on a corner of a street, we're doing it. So there is nothing that we don't respond to with a gun that isn't an active shooter now. In Newport, we don't get a lot of them, but when we do get a call, even a man with a gun, we respond as an active shooter unit, but we don't know if that person's actively going to be shooting people. We just respond knowing, okay, if it happens right now, we're already in the mindset of doing it. So most agencies that I know, I talk to a lot of agencies. I'm actually a detective for traffic investigations. So we have a network of people that help each other. And I talk to a lot of agencies, and they all do the same thing now. It wasn't like before. This is more of every agency we're going to go there knowing that it's going to be an active shooter and hoping that it's not. All right, things that you can expect. All right, so fight or flight, everybody understand that syndrome, flight or fight? We have it, cops have it. Don't get me wrong, I've seen cops on a scene, stuff goes sideways and they run. And why? This reason. They're a tough guy. They tell me they're a tough guy, but they leave me all by myself, right? You don't want that. But we have it, everybody has it, humans have it. We are either going to flight or fight. So we have to understand that. We have to accept the fact that we are like that. How do you know you have flight or fight? You don't. Not until the situation happens. I was a soccer player before this. I became a cop right after that. So I didn't know anything. I was green as green could be. I got into a bunch of ambushes in LA. People were trying to kill me. And I had no idea that I would fight. None. I was hoping, I'd cross my fingers, and I would tell my partner, I'll try to be there, but I don't know. I might run. If I run, I'll quit, right? We don't know until that moment that we feel that our life is in peril, that we have that flight or fight. So understand that. So that if in a situation you feel that, you understand it, and maybe you can accept it for 2 seconds and go, okay, now I know what to do. Okay? And that's kind of what we're trying to do, is just get you guys' minds thinking about what is going to happen or what can happen. Run, hide, fight is a FBI term. They made this basic bullet point of what you can do in an active shooter position. And I will never tell you, only because I've been in one, I will never tell you what you should do. I won't tell you that, because I can tell you right now that there were people in Route 91 that should have been doing things, and they couldn't. They were too scared. They were injured. They didn't know what to do. People were walking around in circles in the middle of the gunfire. They were just, you got to understand that your emotions sometimes won't let you do things. And although I'd like you to do it, I'm not going to tell you you should, because maybe you just can't. And I can't blame you for that. Law enforcement's responsibility. Our responsibility is, like I said, we are going to come in and neutralize the threat. So let's say this room has 10 people in it. Active shooter came through. He did his dirty work, and he's on the move. We're going to come into the building, and the first officer, if not more, will walk right over the people who are injured. And we're going to tell you to try to stop the bleed, and we'll talk about that later. But we're going to tell you, stop the bleed, and we're going to keep moving. The second wave of officers will have medical attention. If I stop and help, there's more people that could be injured. So as hard as it is for us to not stop, it's super important that I keep going forward. One of the things that happened in Route 91 is that there was a girl that was behind me. She couldn't stand up. Her head was rested against my leg, and I took a bullet right in the leg. And the bullet's in my leg, and it stopped. So it didn't go into her head. So I turned around and told her, you need to stand up so we can move. And she couldn't. So what did I have to do? Now, I already took a round for her. Not by my choice, but I'm glad I did. I took a round for her, and I can't be mad at her. It's not her fault that she's very, very scared and she can't move. But I can't also pick her up, right? I don't have the strength to pick her up and get the people out that I'm obligated to get out now. And so I had to step over her and get the people out that are willing to move. And so it's a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard thing. But, see, even after a year. But the reality is that it's more important to get more people out. Okay? We got to get as many people out as we can. And I'm not asking you guys to get somebody out. Don't get me wrong. I'm a cop. This is what I do for a living. So for me to do it, it was natural. My objective to tell people and to tell the friends that were there and the other people that were there and to talk about when I do this stuff in front of cops in our department is that if you can get yourself out, that's one less person I have to save. If she can get 3 people out plus her, that's 4 less people. But I can't expect her to get 3 other people out. Get yourself out first, kind of like an airplane, right? Put your mask on first, then get the next one. If you can get the next one, do it. If you can't, nobody's expecting you to. Just do what you can to get out. All right, so this one. One of the things that we talk about in police force from day one of the academy is the will to survive. We are supposed to be shot multiple times. We're supposed to get in fights with people that are bigger and stronger than us. Because trust me, when I got on, I was 155 pounds. I'm not too much more than that now, and I'm still fighting big guys. I mean, everybody sees these football players that are in high school are like 6'5", 390, and I'm like, right? I mean, they're huge. But that's our will to survive. We won't lose. There's nothing you can do to make me stop what I'm supposed to do, right? And that's what we're trying to get to you guys is that will to survive. Working LAPD, I saw a lot of people shot, a lot of bad guys shot. I saw a lot of victims shot. I saw a lot of gang members shot. One thing I can tell you is that the human body can take a lot of damage, an immense amount of damage. One gang member was being stopped by FBI, and I don't know why they were stopping him. They stopped him. This was back in early 90s. They stop him, try to take him into custody. He grabs a gun, tries to take the gun away from one of the agents. The other agent takes his gun out, shoots him several times. Now, according to the report, one of the rounds hit him right in the neck, and that was the fatal shot. But bad guy takes the gun, kills that cop or agent, runs around the car, getting in a gunfight with the other guy, kills him, and then dies. That's the will to survive, right? He will not stop what he's supposed to do just because somebody's doing that. Now, did I like that? No, I don't like that. But I tell you that the human body can take a lot of damage. I was shot in my right leg. The bullet's still in there. I didn't have to put a tourniquet on, thank God, because it didn't hit my artery. But I didn't get medical attention for 5 hours. I ran around. I had to get 20 people out, jumped fences, went over walls, hid, went through bushes, down the road, down another road, hid again, down another road, went into a business, and barricaded myself in a business. 5 hours. I didn't have any medical attention. You can take a lot of damage. There are some times where you get hit in an artery, now you're in trouble, right? But just because you get shot doesn't mean that's going to stop you. We see it all the time in police work. You guys have seen it on the news. Officers are shooting people. They're not going down. They finally go down. Then what's the first thing they say? Why did the cops shoot them 20 times? Because we don't know if we're hitting them. Because they're not moving like we want them to move when we hit them, right? Bodies can take a lot of damage. So your will to survive is understanding that your body can still work. Your body can still work at what you are trying to do and get out of there. Some of the things, obviously, somebody hits me in the head and my computer goes out, then I'm out, right? But for the most part, a lot of these victims are being shot and they're just sitting there waiting and the person is shooting them more and more and more. So we don't want to do that. We want to try to get as fast as possible out of there. This is the Homeland Security active shooter video. The site at the bottom, if you guys want that, you guys can grab that. We can get it later too. I can always put it back up. This is where we get this presentation from. Obviously, we put our own spin on it, but this is what Homeland Security wants everybody to do. It's a bullet point of run, hide, fight. That's it. We want to run, we want to hide, we want to fight. Those are three options that are very simple for people to understand and simple for people to do, even in a very scary event like this. So run. One of the things that I saw firsthand, and I've been taught this as an officer going into it. The only thing I knew about active shooter is a responding unit. All of my training was a responding officer going in to neutralize a threat. Never did I get taught how to do these things as a victim of the event, trying to get people out, right? So I'm in the same boat you are. Other than the fact that I had a little bit more training of what can happen, and my mindset was different, I was in the same boat you guys are if the event were to happen. One of the things that I saw in this, and this is firsthand knowledge, is that the shooter was shooting from a perch, so he's a sniper in a hotel. He's shooting at a certain angle of the event. Let me see if I have the event. Okay, so, this thing have a pointer? So he's up here, right? You can see how the angle shoots down. He's shooting in this area here. So you see the angle of the streets? So it's a different angle that the shooter is shooting from. Now, when the first shots get fired, you can hear them, but nobody knows what they are. And I'm telling you right now, as a law enforcement guy who shoots a lot of guns, only because the department makes me, that did not sound like gunfire. There was some popping going on, and immediately after the popping, you hear ticking, like somebody ticking metal, right? That's what you hear. Now, as an officer, I'll tell you, I wasn't drunk, so don't think I was. I only had a couple of drinks, and we were actually at the bar to get another one when this happened. I wasn't drunk, but I hear the gunfire, and I hear the ticking, and I turned around because things were hitting my legs, and I'm like, what is that? So that barrage goes out. I'm looking at the crowd. The crowd is moving a little bit, but not really moving. I don't think anybody knew what it was. And there may have been a couple of people who knew what it was because a couple of people got hit on the first one. And I'll say a couple, like 5, maybe 10. The second barrage comes down, and you can see the panic and the expressions on people's faces. You could actually see people getting hit with a round, but you can't see the round. And you still hear the ticking. So what the heck is the ticking? That's my whole thing was, why, if this is a shooting, why is it ticking? Well, the rounds were high caliber rifle rounds. When they came down at that angle, what did they hit? They hit the ground. So the rounds are skipping on the ground. That's the ticking. So now, if I ever get involved in another incident like that, I'll know the shooter's high because of the ticking sound. Hopefully I will never do that. But that's the thing that we, even officers, there was plenty of officers there. There were plenty of nurses. There were plenty of military guys. There were plenty of firemen there. It's a country concert. That's all that's there. And everybody's standing there like, what is that sound? And then once you start seeing people get hit by rounds, everybody knows, I don't care what the sound is at that point, I got to get out of here, right? So just because we have that ability to hear gunfire, he was almost 1,000 feet away. Even the popping sound was weird because he didn't point his gun out the window. He did what a sniper in the military does. They'll stand off of the window and they'll keep their muzzle in the room. And it muffles and it echoes differently than if you were on a gun range. So those are the kind of things that we had to deal with at the time. We didn't really realize what was going on. After the second barrage came down, we all kind of figured it out and everybody started going crazy and running. So why we talk about run? Everybody started going crazy and running. They were running in every direction they thought was the right direction. So I was here, right about there. Rounds were being shot right here. So I could feel, this is AstroTurf, and you can feel the black rubber balls in AstroTurf. That's what was hitting my legs. Not that I knew that at the time. I was just like, I don't know what the heck's hitting me. So after we realized there was gunfire, I didn't know what was coming from. So we ran to this corner right here of these buildings. I ran to that corner of the buildings. More people ran to that corner of the buildings. So then, if this is the building, I posted up on the building and looked in the direction of where I think the gunfire is coming from. Now, when I do that, I can see that the gunfire is coming at somewhat of a 45-degree angle. It's hitting some of the stuff that I'm standing next to. It's hitting some of the lights. And the bad thing is there was people at the front of the stage. The entrance is here, right here. We walk in this way, we go through these security gates, we walk down this food row, and that's where the concert is. So people, 22,000 people know that this is the entrance and exit. 22,000 people don't know that this is an exit, that's an exit, there's an exit over here. I think there was an exit here. I missed that exit completely. I think there was an exit over here. There was like 6 or 7 different exits we could go to. Where does everybody run when they're scared? They know that right there is the exit. So these people over here in the front started running into the gunfire. So I'm standing here watching these people run, and what is the second thing that people do when gunfire comes off? Gunfire comes off, everybody's told to lay down. So what's happening with the rounds? What's the ticking noise? Skipping. So everybody's running, hear gunfire, lay down, and then the round goes right into them, skips into them, right? So can I go out there and help anybody? No, I can't. I can't take myself out of this position that is at least at this moment relatively safe and go out into gunfire, because then I can't help anybody if I'm shot and I can't move, right? So this area right here is being inundated with rounds. People are coming out, and I'm yelling at them, don't lay down. Now, I've been in, 25 different trainings that they train us to go in, and they have actors who yell and scream. There is nothing like 20,000 people yelling and screaming at the same time. Nothing. You can't. I had my wife, arm's length, and she's 5'10", so she has about the same length arm that I do, and we could not communicate. She couldn't hear everything I was saying. I was yelling to her, this is what we're going to do, blah, 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 and she was like, I don't even know what you're saying. And we couldn't get closer because there were so many people in between us, right? So you got to understand that it is an amazing sound, so loud. So these people can't hear me. They're trying to do the best they can. People are going in all different directions. So when we talk about run, and this is the hardest thing to do when you talk about run, is try to take a second or two and assess what is the safest path to run. So if we're in this room and it's completely dark, but you hear gunfire in that way, you're going to think to yourself, oh, I got to run this way. Everybody's going to think that. It's a natural thing to run away from danger. But in this instance, they didn't know where the gunfire was coming from. And because nobody knew where the gunfire was coming from, people were just running in all different directions. So it's as hard as I'm telling you right now, I'm not telling you you should. I'm just saying try to take a second or two and identify the safest place to run away from the gunfire. On that, there is a hide. When you're running, you are trying to get to a place that's safe that you can maybe take a second and then run some more. If you can't run at all, we're trying to hide in a place that the suspect can't see us or is not going to find us. If the suspect's coming in the room, I don't want to hide under the table because in Virginia Tech, he just walked around. Columbine, they just walked around the library, right? We want to hide in a place that is not going to be accessible to the suspect. And that's what we're trying to do is if you have no option other than to hide, then you are going to hide in a place that's not accessible to the suspect, and you're going to barricade. Barricade is that you're going to put furniture, whatever you can, against the door that's coming in, and you won't open that door until the police are there. And if you don't believe it's the police, then you call the police and say, there's people at the door. I'm not opening this door because I was told not to until it's the police and I can't ID them. And the dispatch will tell you, they'll contact the guys inside and say, hey, are you at this door? And they'll say yes, and then they will tell you over the phone, yes, that's them. And you can open the door. But once you barricade yourself, you're not going to open that door until the police get there because you don't know who's outside. Barricade, everybody understand barricade? Pretty easy. Just throw everything you can up there. Orlando, Pulse nightclub, they didn't barricade a bathroom door, and they can't. How are you going to barricade a bathroom door? Some of the things that we have gone over and talked about is that somebody may have to sacrifice themselves, but if you put a body at the bottom of the door and have them sit on their butt, if somebody shoots through the door and hits that body, and that person dies, and they die at the bottom of the door, it's going to be super hard to open that door. So you could still save a lot of people. The reason we tell you to sit is because most people shoot at waist high. If I'm going to shoot through the door, I'm going to shoot waist high. So if you sit, maybe there's some gunfire that goes through, but they're not going to hit you. So that's kind of what we're talking about. We need to barricade those doors. Trust me, I don't think anybody in here wants to be that person. But I would rather save 14 people, or I don't know how many were in the bathroom. I don't remember how many. There was a lot in the bathroom that got shot that night. So I don't want to be the one who saves those people, but I would if I had to. This is a different picture. This is not the venue at the time of 91, but you can see the angles and stuff. And this is what we're going to talk about with the hiding. So let me go back. I'll show you this picture right here. So I was here, right? I was out in the open, in an open area with my back to the suspect. Gunfire comes down. I take a beeline for here, and I hide. What I hide against is a metal sunglass hut. So it's a metal one, but it's the corrugated metal. Everybody know what the corrugated metal is? It's like hair thin. And this guy has high-powered rounds that are going through it like Swiss cheese. There's no cover there. It's what we call concealment as police officers. There's a concealment because he can't see me. Not that he was looking for me, but he couldn't see me there. But if the round were to come into that metal, it's going to go right through it. So there's no cover. Luckily for me, and this was totally luck, I'm not telling you how cool I am, but this right here, you probably can't even see it, but there's a black tower right here. And that tower has lights on it, big giant spotlights. And they're the emergency spotlights. When this went down, they threw on the spotlights. Bad for the people in the middle, right? Because this entire area got lit up. Instead of being dark, now it's all light. Good for me, because as everybody knows, when you get pulled over by a police officer at night, what do? What do they put on your car? Lights. Those lights, we stand behind those lights. Why do we stand behind the lights? You can't see me. Luckily for me, the angle that I stood at that moment, right here, this light was in front of me. And he was shooting from this direction. He could not see me behind the lights. He could not see the 25 people that were with me behind the lights. So my direction to them was, you can run if you want, but we have concealment. He can't see us. 2 rounds hit the side of the corrugated metal and blew up. I could feel them, but he didn't know we were there. There was just lucky rounds that were hitting. Of course, another round hit me, which was lucky for him too. So that's hiding, right? I ran and I hid. And because I hid, he couldn't see me. Now, I have to figure out a way. If it was just me and my wife and my friend, I could probably figure out a way to get from here. Eventually, I get into this building. I can get from here to here pretty quickly with 2 people. Maybe a third if it's my friend. But with 20 people sitting behind me, one of the guys, he's probably about 40 years old, probably my age. His wife was about my wife's age. He has her pinned up against the corrugated metal. He's standing next to me, and he yells at me, "Are you a cop?" Now, I probably should have said no, but I didn't. I said yes. So he looks at his wife, and he's like, "Don't worry, honey. He's getting us out of here." No pressure. None at all. No, I'm good. I'm good with that. So I'm like, holy crap. So I look around, and I look at, there's 20 people behind me that are kind of looking at me because I'm yelling at my friend and my wife directions. So what's their normal reaction? Well, if he's giving them direction, he knows what the hell he's doing. So they look at me, and they're like, all right, you got me. Now I have 20 people. How do I get 20 people from this location into here when there's emergency lights that are lighting up all this area? Right? And he's shooting right in that direction. So I had to stop and think for a long time. I was there for a long time. In a gunfight situation, I was there for a long time. He was going through hundreds of rounds while I stood there, trying to figure out, what do we do? Do I move them backwards? Do I move them sideways? Do I move them to this building? How do I move 20 people and get them all going? Because one of the things that I realized before I got shot was there were people sitting, and my wife is trying to tell them to stand up, and they won't stand up. She lifted 2 of them up, and they fell back down to the ground. Right? So now we're like, okay, how do we move everybody to get them safe? While I'm thinking about that, I devise a plan that we are going to move everybody from here to here. Why? Because it's inside of a building. I already know he's elevated. I don't know where he's shooting from. I just know he's elevated, and he's out of the concert. He's out of this entire venue. And the reason I know he's out of the venue is because while I'm watching where the grounds are coming from, there's no shooter here. So he has to be out of the venue. And he has to be elevated somewhere. So I was looking at this building going, I don't see any gunfire, but he's got to be somewhere over in that direction. So all I know is I need to move these 20 people. Another off-duty cop comes over and helps me. That's how we get him out. So while we're trying to hide, we go from there to here, and that's what we're talking about, is when you are going to run and hide, you are running and hiding. We called it bounding and overwatch. So I'm going to run, I'm going to hide. I'm going to run, and I'm going to hide. So we're not just going to run 4-mile sprint, because we could be running into something. In France, I think it was France, on an Ariana Grande concert, they had a person go in with a bomb. That person goes in with the bomb, blows up. Where does everybody go? Out the gate. And they run so fast out the gate, they had a secondary person with a rifle, and they mowed down people as they came out of the gate. So we don't want to just run aimlessly. We really do want to run and look what we are going to do. It is the hardest thing in the world. Don't get me wrong. I totally agree with you. But if we can keep this in our mind, if it ever happens to us, we can maybe, that could trigger while we're there. Okay, that's why we're talking to you. So we're going to run and hide, run and hide, run and hide. I'll tell you this right here. The reason I know this is the exit, this is a big gate right here. And when we went in here, there was another barrage. We went out the back door, and there was a deputy right here. And the deputy says, go that way, go out the gate. And so, because I know about the Ariana Grande concert, what do I do with this gate? Stop. I tell everybody that was with me, I'm like, stop. No, I'm not going out there. Somebody go first, right? Because I'm thinking there's a guy with a rifle. But no, I stop everybody. Another barrage of rounds come down. Then I move in, and then I tell everybody to come. Because as I moved out of the concert, you could see that there's nobody out there who's shooting us. So luckily for us, when we exited the venue, that was the last barrage that he fired. There was no more gunfire after that. So we were in the venue the entire time that 3,000 rounds were fired. Not all 3,000 rounds were in the venue. Some were on here on the Las Vegas Boulevard because the cops rolled up and he started shooting at them. And a lot of them were going down the hallway too because there was cops on his floor waiting, but he was just shooting out the door at them. So one of the things and that's what we're thinking about is how do we run and hide, Fighting, okay, so as an absolute last resort, absolutely, everybody understands this. There's nobody in here that's going to try to go be a hero and take somebody's gun away from them. But if you have no other option, fighting is not just physical. When I was in Route 91, the fight was, how do I get 20 people out? How do I get them out with a gunshot? Where do I go? It's a mental fight, right? The things that we're talking about with the will to survive, not only is it physical, but it is mental. There was a physical fight in me because I had a gunshot wound and I still had to get out. There was a mental fight in me because I had my wife there, and unfortunately for us, she had just gone through cancer. So, right? She's like, I'm not dying here. If I can beat cancer, I'm beating this, right? So great, right? She was all good. But that's a mental fight, right? You have people there that you know. You have a wound that is going to hinder you or could hinder you. And then in the Waffle House back east, guy goes into a Waffle House with an AK-47 or M16, starts shooting, his gun jams. Citizen gets up, grabs his gun, wrestles away from him, takes him in custody. That is a fight, right? I mean, he did a fantastic job. That is a fight. Do we want you to do that? FBI doesn't want you to do that. But if there's no other resort than to physically attack the attacker, the statistics show that if you attack the attacker, they typically will lose that. And the reason is because they're not mentally prepared for that. When I go into a warrant, and I have 10 of my buddies and we go into a house, the first thing we are prepared for is a fight. An attacker who goes into a soft target with people he thinks are going to just freeze and stop, that is a person who, if you attack them, the first thing they're going to think of is, what the heck is going on, right? So we're trying to also make that impression on you that these people aren't doing reconnaissance on this stuff thinking that 10 people are going to jump them. The guy in France, he's on a train, right? 3 American military guys. Comes in there, he's thinking, I got this whole train. Those guys take him down, right? Why did he lose? It's not because there was 3 of them. He didn't expect it at first. He might have hurt them pretty badly, but the reality is he's not expecting that. If he was expecting that, he would have taken 4 guys with him, right? So understand that these guys are not thinking that you are going to fight back in that term. All right, so FBI study and this is 2016 and 17. They don't have any more studies yet. There are 50 incidences in 21 states in the United States. We don't hear about all of them, right? There are dozens and dozens of these things going on. We won't hear about all of them. 221 people were killed and 722 wounded. 13 law enforcement officers were killed. 20 law enforcement officers were wounded. 14 incidences ended with the exchange of gunfire. Now, this is a big number for us as officers. 14 incidences out of 50 exchanging gunfire. Why is that? Because 13 of them committed suicide, and 8 of them were stopped by citizens, and 18 were apprehended. Why is these numbers so big? Because they don't like to fight. The reason they do these things is because they're scared, and they think, I have now the advantage of everybody. But you got all these people, 8 citizens stopped the shooting because they physically fought the guy. 18 of them just gave up because the police showed up. And some of those they heard the sirens, dropped their guns, and they stood there with their arms up. Right? I mean, they don't want to fight. Only 14 of them actually fought us. And 11 of them were killed. Right? So, I mean, think about it. That's a big number. We have the advantage. The citizens have the advantage. The police have the advantage. They don't. They think they do, but they don't have the advantage. So this was one of the other slides that I talk about with fighting. These numbers are dead people from our Route 91. Here's the venue. This is where we found it. We went out of the venue here, and we ended up behind this church for a little while. I got rid of everybody but my wife, one 19-year-old girl who wouldn't let go of my back pocket, and a friend. And she really wouldn't. I told her, you're safe here. There's 4 officers here. 2 of them have rifles and 2 of them have shotguns. I have a gunshot wound. No one else in our group has a gunshot wound. I have to go find help. You stay here with these officers. They're not leaving this post. Because there was no gunfire. And I waited for 5 minutes here with them, listening to the radio, because once their radio said, we have the shooter down, I told her, there's no more shooter. Stay here. I'm leaving. And she said, no, I ain't doing it. And, you know, she's 19, so she knows everything, right? So I was like, okay. So we had to go over here and hop some walls and do all of those other things. But this was a triage location. This was a triage location. This over here was a triage location. And they were pushing everybody down this alley to the MGM Grand. Seeing this, these people bled out. 31 and 30 bled out. These people over here, they were getting medical treatment and bled out. They were actually getting medical treatment and bled out, so their wounds were pretty severe. These people here got shot, ran out, and died. This was only some of it, because I got an updated one, and they actually had 4 over here, because this was first aid. And the first people that got the barrage, they were rushed right to first aid, and some of them died there. But it's one of the things that we talk about. I went to the hospital 5 hours later, got in the hospital. Doctor came out to see me. He walks in, he looks at me, and he's like, and this hospital is like MASH. It was ridiculous how many people were laying all over the floor. They did a fantastic job, but they were the most inundated hospital. They had the most deaths, they had the most injuries, they had the most everything. This doctor was, they called everybody in from home. The doctor was overwhelmed. The nurses, totally overwhelmed. So he says to me, he looks at me and he says, I'm glad that you're sitting there, because I'm happy that you're not going to die. So I don't even have a tourniquet on. So everything's fine with me. He comes over, he's like, okay, let's get you in there. Let's check out their wound. And I'm like, no. There's like 10 people down the hall that we passed. 700 people got injured. There was like 100. I want to say there was like 120 people got shot around there. I had the statistics, and it's actually up, but I don't remember for sure. There was over 500 people that got injuries that were trampoline injuries. Right? Because people are running crazy. What is the number one thing I told my wife and the people that we were with? We will not go with groups. We will not go with groups. Number one reason is because if there's a secondary shooter, they're going to go after the group anyway. Second reason is because they're going to trample. This entire alley was filled with thousands of people trampling each other. Because the cops were telling them, go to the MGM Grand, we got somewhere to go, right? So they're going down this alley doing that. Where did we go? We went this way. We went to these triage areas. Those medics were way overwhelmed, so we just kept bypassing triage. That's why I couldn't get any medical attention. Everybody was way overwhelmed. Actually, what happened is I went down the street. This is a Hooters. We went into the Hooters. Somebody said that there was a medic up here. The Hooters was filled, like, 5,000 people in the casino. It was crazy in there. So we started making our way up, and by the time we got to the middle, of course, somebody yells shooter, and that's it. Everything goes crazy. So I grabbed my wife and my friend, and the 19-year-old, she wouldn't let me go. So what did we do? When everybody's in a casino, everybody knows what a casino looks like, right? There's a lot of slot machines. My wife starts to run. I grab her. I pull her back. I'm like, put your back against the slot machine and stand here. She's like, they just said there was a shooter. I'm like, there's no shooter. There was only one shooter in the whole event, and on the radio, they said the shooter's down. There's no shooter there. Stand here. So we stood there, let the entire casino flood out. I don't know how many people got hurt on that, and then we just walked out. So one of the things that was helpful to me is that I was able to stand here, right here, and almost watch the entire shooting. So I was able to assess a lot going on in that situation. So I had an idea of what I should be expecting out of this. And that expectation, luckily for me, came to fruition, and I was able to mosey on out and get some medical attention. We actually got out of here, went over here. This is a Coco's, or this is the Coco's right here, and we jumped in there, and barricaded ourselves in a refrigerator. And there were like 7 other off-duty cops in there with like 100 people, and the 2 of them were trampled. So we went in there and sat there. We barricaded the whole place and sat there until my dispatch, until Newport Beach dispatch told me on the phone, "You're good to go." And so once they told me that, walked out, went down the street about six blocks, and then got picked up by a medic and taken to the hospital. So when these people are bleeding out, we're going to talk about Stop the Bleed. In the venue, there were military, police, fire, nurses, and they were stopping the bleed in the middle of the gunfire. You could see people fall, and somebody would jump on them and start wrapping them, take their shirt off, wrap them. Going back to what the doctor said, that hospital was overwhelmed. One of the things that he mentioned to me when he was releasing me is that they would have had 100 more people or more die if it wasn't a country concert, because everybody in that country concert put on a tourniquet. Everybody. He said there's people coming in here with tourniquets, didn't even need them, but everybody got a tourniquet. Right? I mean, that's better than nothing, right? In the old days, back in the 80s, back in the 70s, we had tourniquets. Well, those tourniquets were like this thin, put them around, and what happens when you put a tourniquet on? Back then, the theory was, you get a tourniquet, you lose your arm. Our tourniquets now, that does not happen. You can have a tourniquet on for 5 hours, and you have full range of your arm. They're just trying to stop the bleed because they're wider. People are using their belts, shirts, jeans. Some people were cutting their jeans off. Friend of Katie had a bandana around her boot, because a lot of country girls wear bandanas on their boot, and everybody's taking those off, throwing them, giving them to people. When I got shot, the off-duty cop came over to me, and we were actually standing next to each other, and we both got shot at the same time. That's when I told him, "Hey, we're gonna have to move," because the shooter had moved positions. Not knowing that there was 2 windows, I didn't understand that at the time, but you can tell that the bullets were coming from a different angle. So I said, "We're gonna have to move because I think he either sees us or he's at a different angle, and we gotta move." So we were able to get those people out, but he put a belt around his leg, and I wasn't bleeding bad enough to put one on mine. So one of the things that I should have done, I probably should have put a tourniquet on no matter what, but at that moment, luckily, it didn't hit my artery, and I was good to go. By the time I got to the hospital, my wound was actually already cauterized. So I just had a scab. And then obviously it was a little painful, but not bad. Not like you would think painful. Like if you worked out on your thighs for like 3 hours, that's the kind of pain it is, right? You're like, ooh, hurts. So like I said, your body can take a lot. So, don't give your body too much problems. Here, 58 people fatally injured in this, 700 people injured. I was at Sunrise Hospital. Oops. So there were people who died in the venue, people who died outside the venue, like that picture, and then there were people who died at the hospitals. And the reason people were saved was because of Stop the Bleed, and that's what we'll talk about. But it was super important in this. In our training, our police training, we don't go in and stop the bleed. Like we just never got trained to this. Seeing what those people did at that event. If I don't have to go neutralize a threat, I will be in there stopping a bleed, because that saves more lives than trying to get somebody who's barricaded by themselves with a gun. And that's why we bring in fire. Fire is, I mean, you can't beat these guys going in and saving your life for what they do. Okay, so this is event time. So I'll just talk. These are just bullet points about it, so that a lot of people want to know how the event rolled out. 22:11 hours, he starts shooting, and he fires 80 to 100 rounds into the Vegas area. Now, going back to that picture you saw where the grass was, the AstroTurf, there's probably about 5,000 to 10,000 people in that area. And I would say 10,000 people is a lot. There are 2 of those grass areas. So being 2 of those grass areas, he was shooting into 1 grass area. About 5,000 people. He put 100 rounds into them in seconds. So at that point, like I said, we didn't know what the heck was going on, but we had to figure it out. While I'm talking to people, and trying to figure out what's going on. He's putting down rounds the entire time. This was a part of the movement after I got shot, but let's see if we can get to this one. 22 12 hours, he fires approximately 80 to 90 rounds again. So a minute later, he's firing another 100 rounds. It didn't sound like 100 to me, I'll tell you right now. I told the FBI, I'm like, I don't know, maybe he had 60 round clips. Seemed like he was stopping his shooting at a good kind of rate, but then he would shoot, and then the next rounds would come in a little longer or shorter than the rounds before. So it was kind of weird how he was shooting if you're trying to do what he was doing. Knowing what I know now, the reason is because he was shooting through his door in the hotel room too. So he was shooting here, then he would turn around and shoot there, and then he'd turn around and shoot here. So he had to do some stuff that he had to do. 22, 13 hours. So I get shot, and about 22, 13 hours, I get into the bar. So we were able to move everybody into the bar. So you can see how fast it's going, but I'm telling you right now, it felt like 30 minutes. When the FBI asked me how long the shooting was, I said about 10 minutes, only because I've been in a lot of shootings. But my partner, in this sense, he is an off-duty cop, and he was not with me at the time, but he was in the event. When I talked to him after the event, he said he thought it was 30 minutes long. He thought the shots were coming down for 30 minutes, and he's a cop. He's been a cop for 15 years. Luckily for him and his wife actually went into a hot dog stand and barricaded in there. But you can see how the difference of reality people have. And he's not wrong. I just kind of was like, well, there was X amount of reloads, there was X amount of, and I kind of multiplied it out in my head to say, well, I think it was about 10 minutes. 15 hours, 2 separate volleys, unknown rounds, and that's when I'm exiting the bar, that bar area to get out the back. And then he puts down another round, and I go out of the venue. So what happens out of the venue is I go to that church, and there's 4 cops there, and they have probably 12 people, and one girl is just mowed down. She had just been trampled for days, it looked like. So we had to give her MT and figure out if she's okay to stay there with them, or she had to come with me. She was okay to stay there with them. She was not going to die. She just hurt a lot and bled a lot. The other one is the girl that was with me, the 19-year-old, she got shot in the calf. When I got hit, a fragment round hit her in the calf and skinned her calf. So she thought she was shot, and I had to calm her down, look at her calf, and say, okay, you're okay. One of the things that we want to do is stop the bleed, right? We have to assess everybody. Then, like I said before, went down there, got into that stuff. 5 hours is a long time to have a gunshot wound, and it hurts, but I'm telling you right now, there is absolutely nothing that your body can't do if your mind wants to do it. It doesn't matter what kind of shot or injury you have. Good? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Officer Zeeman. I can say in all of the years of doing these, that was obviously the most emotional one we've ever done, with a clear subject matter expert on the topic. So that was, I learned quite a bit. But as he spoke about, and I feel like a broken record with the CERT volunteers on how to stop the bleed, we feel it's super important in both the fire and the police departments here in Newport Beach that our residents really understand it, which is why we do it as part of our mandatory recertification classes every year. You have to go back and practice it again, but we've pulled it out again for this class, so if you want to go in the back, we have everything set up. Our subject matter expert Emily's there, as well as you can see all the Newport Beach firefighters have showed up as well to assist. But it's your chance to practice how to stop the bleed, how to use a tourniquet, how to go through those procedures. So we really encourage you at the end here to go back and take the opportunity to practice how to stop the bleed. Officer Zeeman and Katie will be right up here, so if you had questions for them or would like to talk to them or had something you didn't want to ask for the entire group, they're happy to talk to you up here and things like that. And lastly, thank you everyone. Thank you again, Officer Zeeman, and for Katie for coming and really participating in this, as well as all of you for attending, and we look forward. The next one will be May 6th, our next all hands meeting, and Katie and I are currently trying to line up our next speaker, and we have a few options. One of them is the Orange County coroner to come in because they've had a really unique experience with Butte County in terms of how they respond and how our coroner responds to these mass casualty incidents. And then we're also looking at the weather service and a few others. But as soon as we have our keynote speaker, we'll let you all know. And then I hope to see you all either at the Drill the Skills or please come on Monday for Richard Eimer's presentation on the CERT response to Butte County. But like I said, Stop the Bleed will be there in the back, so please go back and help or do whatever you practice and things. And then Officer Zeeman and Katie and I will be right up here at the front. But thank you all for being here tonight.